If you're a beginner to game dev, I by and large think that you shouldn't worry too much about which software to pick. Should you use Unity or Godot? It doesn't really matter. Should you use Krita or Procreate when making your game art? It doesn't really matter. Now, if you want to do 3D, you probably shouldn't use GameMaker. If you want to do 2D art, you probably wouldn't pick Blender. I will get into those caveats later. I want to get into why I don't think your software matters that much. So here's the thing. Any person who has sunk more than 1,000 hours into game dev would probably have a really good argument for why their engine is the best.
Unity is more mature than Godot. If you want to port your game to console,
But guess what? Most of this stuff is completely irrelevant to you as a beginner. You know what actually should matter to you as a beginner? That you have fun enough so that you don't quit 2 weeks from now. You shouldn't concern yourselves with runtime fees or console ports. You should be concerned about enjoying yourself until you learn what you like and dislike. You should be concerned with getting far enough into the hobby to actually care about which engine is the best. Now, if I tell you that Godot's node system is terrible, am I telling you the truth? Do I have a good reasoning behind it? Well, if you're a beginner, you actually have no idea. So not only should you worry more about getting into the hobby rather than anything else, 80% of the time you can't even evaluate whether someone is giving you good or bad advice. The thing is, even the people that do give you advice often have a huge bias. A person who grew up programming with Java would probably hate the fact that Python isn't statically typed, whereas a person who grew up with Python might feel that having everything be in a class the way it is in Java is kind of annoying. Now, if you are a programmer, you might feel really strongly about all of this stuff, and you might even have a good argument. At the same time, I kind of feel like most of the time, people like the stuff they like, either because they're familiar with it, or because it fits the work they do. Now, there will be cases where even you as a beginner can evaluate what you want. If you really want your engine to be open source, then pick open source. If every single person says that Unreal has a steep learning curve, and you hate learning things and have never programmed before, then yeah, maybe don't start with Unreal Engine. But by and large, I don't think this choice matters as much as you think it does. I started with Unity, used it for a while, then switched. Switching between Unity and Godot was not remotely as difficult as it was getting into Unity to begin with. An engine is an engine, and if you know one engine, you kind of know what you need to know in order to pick up another engine. And this principle does kind of extend to your drawing software as well. The difference between good art and bad art is being able to draw. So if you're completely new to drawing, your drawing software won't suddenly make your art amazing. All popular drawing software, from GIMP to Krita to Photoshop, they all have the necessary features to make great art. The only one that doesn't is Microsoft Paint. The biggest differences between these softwares are how well they are set up for certain workflows, which you can only really appreciate if you actually have a workflow to begin with. If you don't have a workflow, it's all going to feel kind of terrible, regardless of which software you use. If I draw game art on the computer, I prefer Krita, because I got used to Photoshop's workflow as a kid, and Krita essentially functioned the same but for free. When I draw on the iPad, which is most of the time, I use Procreate, largely because I like how it doesn't get in the way of drawing. But when I make the thumbnails for my videos, well, then I don't like working in Procreate because it sucks for handling text and layer effects. So for thumbnails, I use Affinity Photo, which has this really nice side tab so that you can deal with fonts and adjustments very easily. But you see, these are rather small distinctions. That essentially boils down to me having dealt with drawing programs for such a long time that I actually care about these small nuances. I care about what I think each program does best. I've been drawing for so long that I have developed a taste for how I think the UI should look and function. And for some of my preferences, like my preference for Krita's UI, it's essentially just that I like it because it's familiar to me. But if you're starting out, you have no understanding of what you want, and you have no preferred workflow. You aren't familiar with any software, you have no starting point. So picking the correct choice becomes kind of tricky. You don't know what you want. But did you notice something about what I've just said? You're sitting there afraid of making the wrong choice. As if just because you start with one software, you have to use that software in perpetuity. But I just listed a bunch of software I've used. I played around with plenty of drawing software. I've switched engine. Inevitably, if you do stick around with game dev, you will try things. I'm not sure picking one thing and sticking with it forever is a goal you should necessarily have. It's a weird goal to have. And the more you get into this stuff, the easier it will be to migrate to another software. Now, there can obviously be some issues when you switch engine or software, but there doesn't have to be. I personally found that I had an easier time doing stuff in Godot 2 days after starting with it, even though I had worked with Unity for more than a year. To be fair, my favorite programming languages are Python and MATLAB, but my point is just that switching is something that you shouldn't be afraid of. Making the wrong choice is not something you should be afraid of. Not starting is something to be afraid of. So just pick what feels best and get started. With that said, or rather because of what I've just said, you should remove hurdles that make you not start. If you want to draw on the computer, but you don't have any money, start with Krita. Don't start with Photoshop. If you have a terrible computer that can't run Unity, then start with Godot. Just start. And I'm not saying this because I don't think you can make the wrong choice. I picked up Unity because it was what most people recommended at the time. It didn't quite fit me, but even if it was the wrong choice for me, I still don't regret starting with it. So when I wanted to try pixel art, guess what? I just picked Aseprite. It's popular and recommended. It's probably popular and recommended for a reason. And once again, I don't regret it. When I eventually play around with vector art, which I will do, I'll probably go for Affinity Designer, because I got it in a bundle, so I already own it. If I didn't have Affinity Designer, I'd go for Inkscape. Once again, it's free and fairly popular, so I might as well start there. I'd rather jump in and make the wrong choice than not having jumped in at all. Thanks for watching. Bye.